All right, let's get this thing going. I'm Regan Long of Local Brewing Company, and this is the Brewer to Brewer podcast from All About Beer. My guest today is Shaun O'Sullivan of 21st Amendment, and he is here for a conversation that goes beyond the brew house and into topics that matter to brewing professionals and curious beer drinkers. First, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We'll get into the conversation in just a moment, but first, this message.
First Tee is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Some of the brightest brewers across the country have discovered the First Tee advantage. Hill Farmstead, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and Angry Chair are among the many who have used First Tee's unique and quality teas and botanicals to create top-rate beers. First Tee focuses on being direct, flexible, and fast. You can find out more about First Tee's collaboration with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting firsttee.com/blog. That's FIRSDTEA.com/blog.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
Let's get into it. About my guest today, Shaun is the 21st Amendment brewmaster and co-founder with Nico Fresia. He manages and oversees brewing operations and innovation. Shaun started his brewing beginnings at the Triple Rock Brewery in Berkeley, California, and also in San Francisco at Steelhead Brewery and 20 Tank Brewery, which is one of my favorites. I love that. I didn't know that about you. Prior to brewing, Shaun was a photojournalist for a local weekly in Los Angeles, shooting political and punk rock club photographs, and was once offered a position in the kitchen at Chez Panisse in Berkeley. He also worked as a producer for CNN and as a corporate law clerk at a large New York law firm office in Los Angeles. Back then, he was in the process of going through the hoops and hurdles of applying to either business school or law school when he jumped ship, traded his suits for boots, and was saved by beer. Hallelujah. He enjoys being a father to his amazing son, loves to travel, which he does a lot of, which we'll talk about an upcoming trip. And he has a penchant for cooking and DJs for a local independent radio station. Shaun graduated from the University of California, Los Angeles with a degree in psychology. Thank you so much for joining today, Shaun. I'm super pumped to be able to talk with you.
Regan, I'm excited to be here, and thanks for reading it. I feel like you're reading my eulogy.
I felt the same way in the last one. I was just like, wait, that's what that went into. But anyway, it paves the groundwork for our conversation today. So welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I think this is a great podcast, and let's get into it.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, what are you drinking right now, beer-wise?
Well, so I'm having an El Sully, but with a twist. So this is a beer that we've been doing some small beer projects and packaging them at our pub in San Francisco. So I'm having an El Sully with lime. And this is a beer that we brought out for Cinco de Mayo.
Okay.
So it'll be released for that American holiday.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, and like background on El Sully, though, like that's won a couple of awards, right? The original?
Yeah, El Sully is our Mexican style lager that we innovated at the pub in San Francisco. And then we started packaging. I can't remember what the date was, but it came about because I grew up in Southern California, where I, grew up at the beach and spent a lot of time surfing and in the water and drank a lot of Tecate and Pacifico. And so we thought it would be fun to sort of make this beer up here. And it's a bit of a twist. It's like it's an American Irish brewer making a Mexican lager, and people call me Sully, so it's called El Sully. So it overinflates my ego, which helps as well. And it did win some awards. It's won a couple of awards It's won a gold and a bronze at the Great American Beer Festival. And check this out, the American Cream Ale category.
Right.
Which is funny because it's a category that, it's a head scratcher because people hear Mexican style lager, American cream ale, but it touches all those points in the category description. And we sort of were the trailblazer because now when you look at that category, a lot of Mexican lagers win in that category. So,
okay. Yeah, I remember being at GABF in the award ceremony when it got the gold in the cream ale. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so creative. I would never thought, but like so amazing, right?
It is. And it's also one of those things, I think, because I've been judging beer at that level of the GABF and also World Beer Cup. And you become a better brewer because of it, because you really see what judges are looking at and you know how important those descriptions are when you're looking at the GABF categories, and you have to really like have the come to Jesus talk to yourself. Hey, does my beer fit into that category? So we were lucky, and it's a great tasting beer. I love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, I can't wait to get down to the pub to try that version with lime in it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so I mean, that's one of our things in common. We have many things in common, but one of them is that we both operated, or I operated, you currently operate in the South of Market neighborhood of San Francisco. So that's where you and Nico got your start. Maybe you want to just kind of, I mean, you're a national, 21st Amendment's a national brewery now, but in the 2000s, right? That's when you guys started up. Maybe you want to give us a little bit of background on that process.
Yeah, so it's Nico and I met in 1995. I was an assistant brewer, just a brand new, very green assistant brewer at Triple Rock Brewery, and we just started fostering a friendship. We met later on at UC Davis when I was taking courses in brewing out there, and he was there as well, writing about those courses for the Celebrator Beer magazine, if you remember that magazine back in the day. And so we just started talking about the idea of opening a brewery. It's something that I always wanted to do, a brew pub. It's something he wanted to do as well. He was a theater major at Northwestern. So he was trying to be an actor in Southern California. So because of that, he had a lot of restaurant experience. So he was capable of running a restaurant, managing it, and managing a staff as well. And so so I took on when we came up with the idea, I of course became the brewer and he became the manager, front of the house manager. And we looked in the South of Market area where we are now. We were looking for a place that it had a large enough space for a small little, industrial brewery there as well. And the rents were cheap back then. So it was, a time in San Francisco we signed the lease in 1998. And it was a time in San Francisco when the area wasn't that great down there. I mean, there was a lot of problems. There was a lot of, drugs and homeless activity. And then we opened in 2000, the same year that the Giants started playing baseball. San Francisco Giants started playing baseball in March of that year. And just to continue on with that story, it was the end of the first .com bomb. So that's what we were up against. So right when we opened, it was like, pets.com. That was back in the day when that was big, and all those, I can't remember what the other ones were at the time, but it really impacted our business because all those people went away, but we had those baseball games, which kept us alive. And that's really what kept us alive all these years, was those 81 games or whatever it is at that ballpark. So
Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting neighborhood. We're kind of going through that flux right now, right? And I talked a little bit about that on the previous podcast about us, but you guys have such a following there year round now. People still come through, and it's like a go-to spot for baseball games. I remember when I opened my brewery, people were like, we're not telling anybody about local because we don't want it to become 21st Amendment where it's so crowded we can't get to the bar. and I said, just please tell a few friends.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's I kind of like an example of that. Opening day the home opener was not too long ago. It was a few weeks ago, and every year when they come back, the fans come back, it's overwhelming. It's like Christmas. you feel the energy, and it's
Yeah.
super exciting. It's very festive. And so, there was a line to get in, and we haven't had a line to get in a long time, because of the pandemic and all that. And we're certainly impacted by that. I know you were as well. So we're very, very thankful that baseball is back.
Yeah, no, it's a great neighborhood when there's games happening, for sure. But that, speaks to, so early on, so that was the early 2000s, right? And so when you guys were getting everything going, and you really quickly, you're one of the few sort of brew pubs, in the city at that time. There was maybe like 8 or 9, right?
Yeah, about 8 or 9, exactly.
Yeah, you guys reached capacity early on. So I remember you guys sort of transitioned and had to actually do some contracting outside of the city. That was your growth step, right?
Yeah. So how that happened is like a step back from that is we got into putting our craft beer in cans back in 2006. Which was it was a huge novelty at the time. I mean, there was probably 20 of us in the country, maybe even less, that are putting craft beer in cans. And so how that came about is I went out to Oscar Blues. I went out to actually Denver, Colorado in the 2005 GABF, and I took a visit out to Oscar Blues and saw what they were doing. They were putting the Dale's Pale Ale in cans, and I was kind of like blown away by that. I was like, oh my gosh, craft beer in a can, this is unbelievable. I had collected beer cans as a kid, so it was speaking to me on several levels.
Yeah.
And I went back to San Francisco, and I told Nico about the idea of like putting craft beer in a cans. Our 2 most popular beers at the time were Watermelon Wheat and our IPA. And he thought it was the dumbest idea in the world. And so, but then we looked into all the great reasons of why, all those reasons we know about cans right now. It's better for the beer. It's recyclable. The cans are recyclable. You can take it places you can't take bottles. And so, we had this little 2-head filler in the back, in our brewery there, our brew pub in San Francisco, kicking out like a whopping like 14 cases an hour. And we had bought, like 1 million cans because the minimums were so high back in the day. So we were like, what are we going to do with all these cans? And so we took a page out of Pete Schlossberg, who was a friend of ours from Pete's Wicked Ale, about the notion of contract brewing, and also saw what Sam Adams was doing. And we found a brewery in a little town called Cold Spring, Minnesota, which is about an hour and a half outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And we started contracting there in 2008. And what that allowed us to do is to grow really quickly. We didn't know this was going to happen. We just thought we'd go out there and just brew some beer. And we'd develop relationships on the East Coast with distributors in those markets, as well as, we were starting to flesh out the West Coast. We were in Washington and Oregon, I think, at the time. So it wasn't huge, but it was nice. We were in the middle of the country, and we were able to sort of like ship in both directions. And how we found Cold Spring, we were just literally, I was looking through breweries that had canning lines, and we talked to a few breweries that had canning lines, but we had to play. They kind of pigeonholed us into that we had to use their yeast. They were very like, there are a lot of guardrails up on the process at these places. And so what it was in Cold Spring is I called Mike Knipe, who was the brewmaster who was there for like 50 years. And I called him up and I said, hey, Mike, this is Shaun. I'm out here in San Francisco. Listen, we want to come out and like brew our watermelon beer and then and add watermelon into it. We want to use our own yeast, and we add these other spices in this other beer. And he was like, oh yeah, I think we can do that. And so we went out there and, in 2008 and brewed like 1,000 barrels of beer in that first year. And this is a little town. There's like less than 3,000 people, but there's 5 bars. and we ended up, it worked out really well because we were able to expand really quickly. We didn't have that capital, need, because we had the available capacity there. And it was challenging. It was very challenging. I mean, it was like hard to make these beers there. It was an old, like, regional brewery that had very old equipment. So there were definite challenges there. But what happened later on is years later, they actually put in a state-of-the-art brew house. So we were able to capitalize on that. And a large part, it was because their business plan was to offer this brewing option for other regional breweries from outside the area to come in and brew the beer in the markets that they could sell it in. So, growth is one of those things that's very hard to manage and capital intensive. So
yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of, so then what drove you to then, so you were doing contracting for what, about 5 to 8 years before you decided to bring it back?
Yeah. So yeah, we were started in 2008 and we started brewing in 2015 at our new brewery in San Leandro. So what did you ask me what the motivation was, or?
Yeah, I mean, basically, what was that tipping point where you basically went from contracting to, okay, I'm in the Midwest, where you're centrally located in the nation, and to bringing it back to the Bay Area in a much larger facility?
Hubris. Looking back, I don't know if I would have done it.
Yeah.
We were in the same position of a lot of breweries at the time. We were growing 35% a year. It was like, this rocket ship is never going to stop.
Yeah.
And, and then in 2015, it kind of did, for a lot of us, there was like a big, there was a lull there. And so you had to sort of get creative with what you wanted to do. So the reason why we did it, though, I don't think we had to do it in retrospect, maybe not at the size we did it at, but we needed the capacity. They were running out of capacity in Cold Spring. They were taking on other contracts. They became a huge co-packer of like White Claw and Monster. And so we were competing. We were competing for those line times on those canning systems. And we weren't able to innovate anymore. So and it was always, this is the hubris part. It was a dream of Nico and I to like bring the beer back to the Bay Area. So
Right.
Yeah, so in 2014 we started construction, and in 2015 we started brewing down there in San Leandro in what was an old Kellogg plant. So that's where they made Rice Krispie treats and all that stuff that we grew up with as kids, and it's a huge facility. And what happened in 1995, Kellogg's left that facility and then went elsewhere. But it laid fallow for a long time. There was really nothing going on there. And the campus is huge. I mean, the building space is ginormous, and they had like other buildings across the lot from us. So it was a huge campus for them.
Yeah, I actually was just out visiting Drake's, and I've been to the 21st Amendment facility in San Leandro, but I didn't realize that like literally Drake's is in your backyard. Like, I didn't realize they were that close to each other. But it's so great because, two great large regional brewing facilities right there based in San Leandro. It's fantastic. And, I know that we'll talk a little bit down the line about, some of the additional things that you guys are going to be doing there, but I did want to bring it back to, one of your most popular beers. Like, I know that there's like, it's the Hell or High Watermelon Wheat beer. I heard that this is a very awaited day when it comes to its seasonal release, that people just like line up for it. So maybe you want to give us a little bit of background on that beer and how it's out. And
well, it is. It's our largest seasonal, and it's like when it comes out, you feel like summer is here in a lot of ways. And we run it around from March until, I think we run it until August now. And actually we might start a little bit earlier now, like in February. But anyway, so the way that beer came about, it was back in 2002 or 2001. We had just opened the pub. And this recipe is actually Nico, my business partner, Nico's recipe. So it was a beer that he brewed on Oak Street in the Panhandle at his apartment in San Francisco. And he came to me, and he, the first year we opened, he said, what do you think about brewing my watermelon beer? And I was like, nobody's going to drink that crap. And so we just kind of dismissed it. And then I figured out how to do it. And so the second year we were open, I brought him back to the brewery. And I said, I got a surprise for you. I figured out how to make your beer. And I had floor to ceiling stacks of watermelons.
Oh, wow.
And it just took off. I mean, it just became like this juggernaut. It's also one of those, like, it's a head scratcher because at the time, fruit beers had a sort of connotation, and I'd have like these big beer people who were like, I knew the tipping point was when like these folks that are really into double IPAs and stouts, the people that are, really into this whole thing, and they would just whisper in my ear and they'd say, hey, Shaun, I just want to let you know, privately that I really like your watermelon wheat. And I was like, yes, We've got them. But we would do launch events. We would do these things. We do watermelon. This was at the pub. We do watermelon bowling, and we would drop watermelons off the roof on the ground. We'd have people like all around, like cheering for this. It was just mayhem. So
yeah, it's such a great, unique beer for sure. I don't know that I know any other beer like it out there in the market. I mean, you guys, there probably aren't very many, are there?
It's interesting. We thank you for saying that. I mean, we feel really passionate. We feel like we make the best version, and we do, of course. But the thing about it is that the watermelon is in the same family as the cucumber, and so it has like a rind-like, refreshing spa water flavor to it. I think what happens is that people think of watermelon as the Jolly Rancher artificial candy flavor. And so we're not about that. We put real watermelon in, so it's not going to be this like candy bomb that you want. It's just really refreshing. And the best thing about it is that we thought up this idea that, of putting a watermelon wedge on the side of the pint glass. And that's like a built-in billboard for when people see it. They go, I want one of those. So you'll be at the bar sometimes, and there'll be all these watermelon wheats, and everybody has this huge watermelon wedge on the side as this garnish. And so one thing, actually, we sold this beer. I don't know if we're still selling it, but we sell it in the ballpark, in the Giants ballpark down the street. And so what we would do is we would actually hand slice watermelon slices and take them down there so they could serve it, with those beers as they sold it in the ballpark.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. That's definitely making sure everybody's on brand. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you're just people walking around and they see that and they're like, "Hey, I want that. What's that? I want that watermelon beer." So
yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, it does kind of come down on a lot of levels to marketing, which we can certainly get into in a minute. But I want to go back to the other major flagship beer that I remember going to the pub and just falling in love with was the original Brew Free or Die IPA. And I just noticed, like, again, being in the beer industry, it comes down to adapting, innovating, right? And I just noticed the last time I was down there that you guys have diversified that line. You actually do multiple different iterations of Brew Free or Die, right?
Yeah, we do. So there was the original Brew Free or Die, which is a West Coast style IPA. Back in the day, it wasn't called a West Coast style IPA. It was just called an IPA.
Right.
And it's low on crystal malt. It's it's essentially like pale malt, a little bit of Munich, and maybe super light crystal, like 15L. And it's aggressively hopped with great hop aroma. And it was our flagship. I mean, actually, it's funny because our first beers that we canned back when we had that little canner in San Francisco, the beers were just called Watermelon Wheat and IPA. We had not created these fanciful names. And so what happened, flash forward in 2008, we partnered up with, actually Dave Wilson was our national sales manager and used to work for Deschutes, and he was from Bend, Oregon. So we partnered up with a branding team up there. TBD with Paul Evers and his group, and that's when we really explored the idea of coming up with these fun names like Hell or High Watermelon and Brew Free or Die, and we became a branded house in a lot of ways. And so with that particular line, we saw an opportunity to take the Brew Free or Die line and really have fun with it and innovate off of it. So we have Brew Free or Die Hazy. The other big juggernaut, aside from Hell or High Watermelon, is the Blood Orange Brew Free or Die. I mean, that beer is it's a fan favorite. It's honestly a beer that, like, if you don't like IPAs, you'll like this beer. And if you like IPAs, you'll like this beer because the blood orange flavor is really complementary to it. So we've just had a lot of fun with it. We've got a lot of use out of those presidents on Mount Rushmore and the Statue of Liberty, of course. So, but it really fits into our whole, like, this sounds like like I'm reading off a pitch sheet, but we have this saying, we like to celebrate the right to be original, and I think it really comes true on our imagery, especially with those two products and beyond, honestly. And what's interesting, to step into that for a moment, that the artist that designs all those cans, those labels, his name is Joe Wilson, and he's from England. He lives in London, outside of London.
Wow.
So it's like it's an English person's like take on Americana, which I think is really kind of unique. So,
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I had no idea. What a great story. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, one of the things too is going back, and what I wanted to interview you on this show is to get a little bit more, just as someone who loves to learn, and certainly a big fan of obviously beer, but the business of beer. Like, you have had so many experiences, again, opening your pub, the contract brewing experience, and then opening up a much larger facility, bringing it back here, and you've also had a number of partnerships. Like, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the experience and how and why the Brooklyn partnership came about. That's something that I wanted to personally, know a little bit more about.
Yeah, so we did we're no longer partners with Brooklyn Brewery back in Brooklyn, New York. But what happened with that is, there's safety in numbers in a large part in this industry. And so we saw an opportunity with Brooklyn saw an opportunity to sort of combine a few brands under their roof. Now, we were still owned, they had a minority interest in us. And they also, the other brewery that was involved in this partnership was Funkworks, out of Fort Collins, Colorado. And so the idea is essentially it was a sales platform. What happened is that it took our, little meager sales team and it blew it up, because everybody that was selling Brooklyn, their team started selling 21st Amendment and Funkworks. And so we combined the sales platform. So we got like a lot of, people out there selling our beer, which was great. And then the other side of it was Brooklyn made some investments into some capital improvement projects with the brewery. We upgraded our lab. We have a plate and frame filter, souring vessels, and some other things that we purchased with their investment. So it and it was working out. We were kind of chugging along, and we were seeing some new opportunities, and then COVID happened. So what happened was it just sort of we had to really pivot, and it just at the time, and then it didn't make sense to do it anymore. So we parted our ways. I love the Ottoways, Eric and Robin are good people, back in, the owners of Brooklyn. But it was, we just decided it was probably best to sort of go back to what the original arrangement was. So with our own team. So.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I just remember that happening and just kind of wasn't really sure of that whole process. It's amazing to hear about it. Just because sometimes you got to look at those opportunities, kick the tires on it, right? Give it a go and see what happens,
Yeah. Then you have to like pivot if the market kind of goes in, a certain direction. And I think that's what happened with that situation. It was like, you kind of go in with one idea, and then you see what's happening, and then you need to kind of like, all right, reevaluate. And also, because the market also flipped upside down too, just because of COVID and how beer drinking habits changed as well.
Got it. Yeah. One of the things I definitely want to get into in a bit here, but I want to take a quick break, but I do want to come back and talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing at the 21st Amendment facility in San Leandro going forward.
Yeah. So what's happening is that we have this huge, for folks who don't know, so we have, I think around 80,000 square feet, it might be a little more, at our brewery in San Leandro. And it's a 100-barrel system. It's a GEA system. So it's German engineered, although it was all built mostly in Hudson, Wisconsin. And we have a huge facility. We have a lot of capacity. We have a state-of-the-art canning packaging line, and kegging as well. And so, because the industry has changed, and we certainly have excess capacity, that we are pivoting our model in some ways, not away from beer, not away from making our own beer, but because we have this capacity, that we see an opportunity to invite other companies to make their products with us, and package their products with us. So one of the investments that we're making is in a tunnel pasteurizer. So what this does is enables us to make beverages outside of the beer space that require pasteurization. So any sort of thing that requires, if we're adding sugar or some sort of sweetener that, where the cans need to be pasteurized and sort of for shelf stability and sort of keep the micros out. So we're excited about doing that. And if you would have told me 5 years ago, Regan, that I would be excited about a tunnel pasteurizer, I would have thought you were drinking too much beer. But, the thing that, at the time when we started brewing in 2015, we felt like, we had this sort of anchor around our neck because, we weren't growing into the facility as aggressively as we thought. And so this is becoming, I think, our greatest asset in a lot of ways. And so we are already brewing beer for some breweries right now, but really looking at other opportunities in outside the beer space that in the general beverage space. So yeah, it's exciting actually.
Yeah, super exciting. So it sounds like we'll take a quick break and then we'll circle back.
First Tee is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Some of the brightest brewers across the country have discovered the First Tee advantage. Hill Farmstead, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and Angry Chair are among the many who have used First Tee's unique and quality teas and botanicals to create top-rate beers. First Tee focuses on being direct, flexible, and fast. You can find out more about First Tee's collaboration with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting firsttee.com/blog. That's FIRSDTEA.com/blog.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
Well, welcome back. So we'll just jump right back into that topic, if you don't mind, Shaun, because I kind of want to know a little bit more about some of those like new products that you might be sort of experimenting with this new capacity at 21. I mean, you talk about other beverages other than beer. I mean, people are doing, are you going to go back to what the Midwest brewery, contract brewery, are you going to do White Claw or what? Are you going to be?
Well, I'll tell you what, if White Claw wants to make their beverages with us, we'll gladly take them on as a partner. I mean, we have a lot of capacity. I mean, we have about three, the capacity with the brew house and the canning line can spin at about 300,000 barrels a year. So, that's beyond, and so when you look at other beverages don't require the residence time in tanks, where you can make, if let's just use White Claw as an example, it doesn't take any time to make something like that.
Right.
But for us, we're also excited because it allows us to move into other spaces. And the NA space is really, the non-alcoholic space is really popular right now as it gains a foothold here in this country where people are becoming more concerned about that, which I think is great. In other countries outside the United States, it's very popular. There's a focus on that actually in consumers' consumption patterns. And so what the tunnel pasteurizer will allow us to do is to make those products effectively. I mean, that's kind of the key ingredient you need to do it correctly is to have a tunnel pasteurizer. We're also going to get into like the RTD space. The 21st Amendment name like lends itself to cocktails and liquor.
Right.
And we have the licenses and permits in place in order to make those for both ourselves and for others. So, and so, yeah, it kind of opens up a whole like world of beverages. I think what's really important now, especially and I don't care how big or how not big you are, is that you have to look at breweries need to look at themselves as beverage companies now. We cannot just to be successful, we have to, and to attract consumers, we really need to get people in the door through other drinking opportunities. And, whether those are non-alcs, RTDs, hard seltzers, and whatever those variants are, we need to start like leaning into those beverages and start creating those types of beverages that people are going to want to come and drink.
Sure, it makes sense. And, pardon me, it actually leads into one of the things I was going to ask you, like, how do you, sort of experiment with those new products? Like, how do you innovate at a large, within a large, regional brewery? Are you doing some of that innovation back at the pub? I know you're doing some brewing there personally these days. So, I mean, is that we'll talk about your brewing, but like, is that how you guys kind of pilot ideas?
That's exactly how we do it. So we are using our pub facility as the test kitchen and the innovation kitchen. So kind of come up with ideas, and we'll brew it there, and we'll brew several different versions of it. And then we'll bring it over to San Leandro, and then we'll of course we create like the plan. We have the product design, packaging design, and the POS outside of that and all that, and then we're able to sort of like take it from there and bring it over. There was a good case example of that is, there's this new style of beer called cold IPA, which I've completely leaned into. I mean, I know the name is a head scratcher, and people get bent out of shape of whether it's an IPL or a cold IPA. What is it? It's also, you end up describing what it isn't. It's not a steam beer. It's not a pale lager. And so, but getting back to the innovation is that I spent a lot of time like innovating that style at the pub and brought it over to San Leandro, and it's been great. I mean, we started brewing it, less than a year ago, and it's been one of those. For me, it was when I have other brewers tell me that they really like that beer, I'm like completely jazzed. To me, it's like that's like a really great compliment all the time. Like, so that's an example of kind of the innovation that occurs over there. And we'll do brews at the pub, but we don't call them what they're eventually going to be. So it's always like this sort of skunk works kind of apparatus going on, where we're like, all right, we're making something here, but we're not telling you exactly what it is. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's what's kind of really amazing about the fact that you guys maintaining your pub status and based, right there near the ballpark, still go there and try like the up and coming. I think that's when I had the cold IPA version of Brew Free or Die. It was just a couple of weeks ago down there, which I just thought was like just so great. It's nice to be able to have the ability to just play around on a smaller system. But you're actually doing that now. So how does it feel to be back in the brewery? I mean, I know you probably never left, but getting back in there, does it keep you motivated? Like, you're doing the innovation stuff there. So
Regan, I freaking love it. It's not sustainable because so just to back up. So, I was brewing for a number of years as the brewer there. And then what happened is we got bigger, and then now I have an office in San Leandro. It's actually why I got out of my last job, because I didn't want to be in an office anymore. So I've created my own hell again. And so what's happened is that but we've been so slow in San Francisco that it didn't warrant having having a brewer there. So I've jumped back over there. I love it. It's physical. It's what it's just selfishly, I enjoy it. But it's not sustainable. And what's great about it, is that we're now going to have some of the brewers over in San Leandro come over and brew there as well. And so we'll see how that goes before I bring somebody back on full time there. But yeah, it's been great. It's just fun to kind of innovate. It really taps into my, my ethos, which I approach brewing as, a combination of science and cooking. I mean, I love cooking. You read in my bio at the top of the show that, I once tried out at Chez Panisse and was offered a job there. That really did happen, and I was at a crux in the road of whether I was going to get into cooking or into brewing. I mean, Chez Panisse is on Shattuck Avenue. Triple Rock is on Shattuck Avenue here in Berkeley. So it's literally, they're on either sides of the street. And it was either which side of the street am I going to go on. So, I decided I enjoyed cooking at home more than I enjoyed, that I would then, and I thought I could, brewing would be a great career for me. So that's how that worked out. But yeah, innovation, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. You have to listen and you have to pay attention to what's going on, and you certainly make things that don't turn out the way you want them to. I always say the brew pub is a great opportunity to sell your mistakes. The rule of thumb, this is an inside secret, is that you change the name and dry hop it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, exactly. That's definitely, I think we've all been there numerous times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, thinking about sustainability and just like, you personally, we were talking a little bit earlier today about, again, as brewery business owners, just, kind of like what the end game is, like and I don't know how much you want to get into this, and have a super long conversation, but I mean, I was telling you, and we were having this conversation earlier about the fact when I opened local, I was thinking more around like the modern times kind of vibe, where you'd have like a 10-barrel brewery and it'd all be neighborhood located and centric and all that sort of stuff. And but there's this sort of stigma around, selling, or unless you do it within certain parameters. And I think that one of the things that we were talking about, it's like, I don't have kids, like, if local continued on, it's not like I can, say, okay, hey, to one of my children, take on the brewing business. And so it's one of the things that I really think is worth having a discussion around, because it's conversations that happen with owners. And I think a lot of people, have some opinions on it. And I think it's just something that needs to be discussed, because, we're all in this business. The brewing business is challenging. It's all passion oriented, but at the same time, you got to make money at the end of the day. Right.
Well, you said it just now, which was perfect. It's passion oriented. We get into this thing because we're passionate about it. So, and we don't really sometimes, especially like Nico and I, we were just a couple of beer geeks that has opened this place up, and we don't really think about like, what are we going to do with it? Right. None of us had kids at the time. What do you do? How do you do this? So you just tumble along and you start fall over yourself, and you start like, okay, we're just making beer out of our pub. Okay, now we're making beer in the back of our pub and in cans, and we're selling it to this little area. Okay, now we're making it in Cold Spring. Now we're selling it to like 10 states, and then now we're in San Leandro and we're selling it to 35 states. And it's like, and then as you get older, which I'm getting older, by the way, and
can't tell.
I know, thank you. That was the right thing to say. And you kind of wonder, like, what are you going to do? What do you do with it? And I think that, as owners, that conversation needs to happen more often, because in some ways we get pigeonholed into only doing certain things because of how does it appear? How is this going to play out in the public forum of craft beer? And we're sensitive. I'm sensitive. Like, I don't want to lose people. I don't want to like lose my friends and all this. And I think that, as an industry, I think there's a conversation that has to happen, because unless, like you said, if you don't pass it to your kids, maybe they don't want it if you have kids, or you don't want to do an ESOP, sell it to your employees, because sometimes that has its pitfalls, because they want to get paid, and if you're not kicking out cash, and what's their like recourse? How are they going to get their money? It has to happen from a sale. And so, a lot of breweries that are in those positions have to do that.
Did you ever, if you don't mind me jumping in, did you ever consider doing that?
Doing an ESOP?
Yeah.
I think we talked about it, but it, again, it's one of those things where unless your company is growing, how do your employees going to benefit from being employee owned? So through dividends, yes. But, if you're not growing, then it becomes a challenge. And so, and also they're laden with a huge amount of debt because you're selling your stock to them essentially. And so the company takes on a note for that. And that becomes like, that has its pitfalls and challenges as well. So, I think that what's interesting to me is that in any other industry, and I don't have the answer to this, by the way, but I just look at it from the, the 35,000 or 35,000 foot view, is that in any other industry, I don't care what it was. If you were like, if you started a salami company back in the, the 30s in New York City or whatever, you're you held on to it, but at some point you probably ended up selling it, and that was your reward. And in a lot of industries in the Bay Area, it's very, very noticeable. It. That's like a tech industry. That's the whole mandate, is like grow this thing to sell it. I mean, those companies don't even make money, and they just sell them based on like an idea.
Right.
So I feel like in the brewing world, we're kind of it's a little bit of a head scratcher for me, because I think that unless you sell your brewery, let's say that's what you want to do, to a independent entity, then that's okay. But if you sell it to a larger, like, an Anheuser-Busch, Heineken and all that, that's, even though the payday could be immense, then you're considered to be a pariah.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is, if you sell it to a private equity firm, nobody even knows about that. And you slip under the radar with that. So not to cause a controversy, but, I feel like any brewery that was my size back in 2014 and 2015 certainly had conversations that were life-changing, that potentially could be life-changing, for yourself and your family and your employees to a certain extent too. And I feel like, I think this is something that it's a conversation that I have with many owners, because we're all struggling, and a lot of us are trying to figure out what the end game is. I don't know what that answer is. We're plugging along, we're doing what we're doing. We don't have anything in sight right now. So, it's almost like a little secret society we have here. Like, we're each other's therapists. It's like, what are you going to do? I don't know. Well, what do you think about that? I don't know. Well, this happened to me. These people talk to me. Well, I don't know. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it's just such a really interesting situation and a topic, because I feel like, there's these parameters around where it's okay and when it's not okay within the industry. And do you feel that customers care? I mean, because that's what matters. I've always been customer centric, so I don't know. Do they care enough to where it moves the needle?
Well, it's how you define your customers. If your customer is just the person buying, a can of beer, a pint, a pint of beer from your shop, they probably don't even know what's going on. I mean, do you know what's going on in the accounting world or the legal world with acquisitions? You have no fucking idea. Yeah. And so it's the same way for most beer drinkers, but we are so close to it. I mean, it's like right in front of us. We are like, it's just front and center for us, because we live and drink this every day. And so, but are your other customers, possibly, bar owners, those are customers. Your distributors are customers too. And so, is it going to affect you if, like, if you make a decision and all of a sudden, like that, that cool beer store down the street that has a beer buyer that's concerned about those things and like what that looks like, it's something to consider, because maybe they won't be happy with the decision that you make about like what you want to do with your company.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I feel like, there just should be some more discussion. I was telling you earlier, like, one of the things when I was on the San Francisco Brewers Guild board, that was when Anchor was bought out. And then there was this whole sort of, because the Brewers Association has like these rules around, you can't be a part of the guild or association if you're owned by Big Beer. And it was just so hard for me personally to be like, we're kicking Anchor out of the guild right now, because I'm happy they're still alive and around. They're the oldest craft brewery in the nation, so.
Yeah, that was a travesty, in my opinion. I mean, for the listeners, it's like, Anchor was bought by Sapporo. And the rules, like you said, about the Bay Area Brewers Guild was they were voted that they couldn't be in. And it was just sort of like, what the heck? I mean, like you said, oldest craft brewery in the country, and it's Anchor Brewing Company. I mean, they built this city on beer, not rock and roll. And and I just feel like that. I mean, just clip their wings a little bit, give them non-voting rights or whatever it is. But it was just like, that was That's to me like the myopic view of like craft beer in some ways, is like we are literally like eating our own young because we're a little too precious at times, I think. And this is coming from a guy who's been doing this for almost 30 years.
Right.
And I love craft beer, but I feel like we are a little too precious at times, you know.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, we're in the industry with, small, players, big players. I just feel like it's just great to have so many different players, and, and you learn something from every level of this industry. And I feel like, removing people from certain, or breweries from certain situations, it seems a little short-sighted to me anyway.
Exactly. To me, I feel like, look, we're in a nation where their exclusivity is becoming a thing. We need to be more inclusive in all areas of life.
Right.
I don't care what it is, but we need to be including people rather than excluding them, and not making it hard for them to be part of this process and everything. I mean, if anybody should be doing anything right now, I think you should be opening up more craft brewery distributors.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Because they're going away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm going to wrap this up here soon, just to be conscious of your time. But before we do, I do want to touch on a couple of things, because you just dropped a reference to one of my favorite songs, "We Build the City." And so you do, I know you're going to be traveling. You're, going to be going on a trip.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, you can't drink beer and make beer and run a beer business all day long. So I'm a very creative person. I like to, I take pictures, I cook at home, I travel a lot. I mean, I like to take the beer hat off.
Yeah.
And so I have this little radio show on this little pirate radio station called RadioValencia.fm. The show's called Sufficient Grounds with yours, Sully. And you can tune in every Sunday at 10 o'clock Pacific time and check it out. And so I'm just like getting my legs underneath me with it. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, I kind of go in there, I play records, music, have a little patter. I play a lot of different eclectic stuff. It's like classic college radio station music. It's like stuff maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't. So
you've been doing it a while though, right?
I've been doing it for a little over a year. So I'm also volunteering with CalX Radio, which is the UC Berkeley radio station, because I want to get a show there as well. So I've got this little radio. I got this voice for radios. I have a face for radio.
I love that. Well, and so trip coming up, right?
Yeah. So I've got a big birthday coming up. I'm turning 40 in
yes.
May.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Can you believe it? Thank you.
I'm older than you. I had no idea.
It's crazy, isn't it, how that worked out? So I'm headed to check this out. I'm going to Copenhagen, or Copenhagen as you wish, and also Iceland and the Faroe Islands.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And the reason I want to go to Iceland is I've been flying over that country for a long time, coming back from Europe. And I always look down there and I'm like, what is going on down there? How do they, what's the deal with Iceland? And so I decided I'd go there. I've never been there, but my phone has. One time I left my phone on a plane. I know that's verboten. You're not supposed to do that because you might screw things up. But I left it on.
Come down, Shaun.
Exactly. So I flew over Iceland and my phone connected to the cell service network. So my phone was there, but not me.
Got
I
it.
have to join my phone and my girlfriend in Iceland. So in a week or so.
Nice. That's so amazing. I it's on my list because I'm a big oceanography, volcanology nerd, and on my bucket list is seeing the Northern Lights. So I hope.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's going to be great. I hope you're able to have a really great relaxation on your trip. And thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate this conversation. It's been so just hearing your breadth of experience, it's just amazing, and really inspiring. So thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Shaun will be back on the next episode of this show as the host, having a conversation with a brewer of his choosing. That will be on the air in 2 weeks. So make sure you tune in to that. Shaun, any final words? Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, Regan, I mean, honestly, it's been great. I mean, we've been neighbors for so long.
Yeah.
And it took a podcast for you and I to have a conversation longer than 10 minutes because usually we run into each other. I think I ran into you at opening day.
Yeah. We were
And
both
so
a little bit lit. Yeah.
we
That
had
was
been
fun.
having fun. But no, this has been great. And I look forward to like doing a collaboration beer with you at some point. So
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah.
We were just talking about that. You want to talk
Yeah.
about the festival at all?
Yeah, we do this big festival called August Fest. It's like our birthday festival, and it's in August in San Leandro. I forget what the dates are right now, and it's at our San Leandro brewery, and it's just a huge party. We have food trucks, we have bands, we have a little play space for kids. We have a cigar bar which Nico puts on,
Ooh, nice.
and the cool thing about it is that we do these collaborations for it. So, and I want you, Regan, to be part of it.
I can't wait. This is like our opportunity to finally brew a beer together. So I'm
There you
looking
go.
forward to it. All right, everybody, visit allaboutbeer.com and follow on social media. And to support journalism in the beer space, check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer. I'm Regan Long. Thank you for listening to the Brewer to Brewer podcast.
First Tee is a proud sponsor of the Brewer to Brewer podcast. Some of the brightest brewers across the country have discovered the First Tee advantage. Hill Farmstead, Sweetwater Brewing Company, and Angry Chair are among the many who have used First Tea's unique and quality teas and botanicals to create top-rate beers. First Tee focuses on being direct, flexible, and fast. You can find out more about First Tea's collaboration with brewers and tea ingredients by visiting firsttee.com/blog. That's FIRSDTEA.com/blog. Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.